alone, vulnerable, exposed. You think survival is enough, but power? That is reserved for those who master the art of the lone wolf. In this video, I will teach you the 3 unforgiving laws that turn isolation into dominance, laws that make allies irrelevant and fear your silent companion. The world belongs to those who act decisively, not to those who wait for others' permission. Alone, you are underestimated. Alone, you are invisible. Yet this invisibility is not a weakness, it is an advantage. The lone wolf thrives in shadows, striking when the moment is ripe. In today's exploration, we dissect the psychology of solitary supremacy. Cold observation, ruthless strategy, and unyielding control will be your weapons. Can you endure the truth that power favors the self-reliant, the patient, and the cunning? Let us begin. You have heard it said, appear weak, and none will suspect your strength. But have you truly understood the power hidden in vulnerability? Let us dissect this. History is littered with kings and generals who underestimated the quiet, the small, the seemingly insignificant, and paid the ultimate price. Take Hannibal, the Carthaginian general who crossed the Alps. Rome laughed at his audacity. They saw a foreign army, small, stranded in the mountains, a force easy to crush. Yet that perception blinded them. Hannibal struck when they were unprepared, turning their contempt into catastrophe. Weakness, perceived or real, can be your greatest ally. Ask yourself, how often do men react to what they see, rather than what they feel? They judge the surface, the gestures, the words, the apparent helplessness. This is where you strike. The world does not fear what it respects. It fears what it underestimates. Make others believe you are manageable, compliant, or inferior, and you control their calculations before you even move. Consider the fox among lions. The fox appears small, timid, perhaps even fragile. The lions do not anticipate its cunning. You, too, must learn the art of calculated invisibility. Show weakness, yes, but never reveal the full measure of your skill, your intellect, your patience. Let them believe they hold advantage, while you quietly orchestrate outcomes behind the veil of underestimation. Psychology teaches us that humans are wired to exploit perceived weakness. Empathy clouds judgment, pity leads to dismissal, and dismissal that is the crucible of dominance. When someone believes you cannot harm them, they drop their guard. And in that instant, the power is yours. Have you noticed how often those who seem meek are the most dangerous? History, and human nature itself, confirms it. Let us examine an example closer to home, the courtly intrigues of Renaissance Italy. Princes surrounded themselves with allies, advisors, and sycophants. Yet often, the men who appeared least threatening, scholars, secretaries, even jesters, pulled strings unseen. They whispered, observed, and acted with precision. The prince's eye was upon them, but the eye alone cannot pierce the mask of controlled weakness. To be underestimated is to move unchallenged in a world of pawns pretending to be kings. Now, consider the psychological architecture of this tactic. When you present yourself as weak, you evoke both confidence and arrogance in others, confidence in themselves, arrogance in their judgment. Both are vulnerabilities you exploit. Every slight underestimation builds a margin of error. In their favor, a margin you will use to dominate, dismantle, and dictate, and they will not see it coming. The art lies in patience. You do not strike in haste. You allow the illusion to flourish. You let them believe their victory is certain, while your strategy ripens in silence. Does this feel immoral? Perhaps, but morality is the luxury of the powerless. The world does not reward those who obey ethics over effectiveness. It rewards the cunning. It rewards the patient. It rewards those who bend perception to their will. The law of perceived weakness is neither cruelty nor injustice, it is clarity. It is the precise calculation of human expectation, exploited without remorse. And now, reflect upon your own life. How often have you been misjudged? How often have others assumed your capabilities to be limited? You have been given a gift. Their blindness is an opportunity. The moment you accept this, you step into a zone of control. You learn to wield perception as a weapon. You learn to move unseen, strike unexpected, and emerge victorious in ways those around you cannot comprehend. But beware, weakness must be deliberate. True vulnerability is fatal. The difference between the controlled wolf and the hunted prey is subtle yet absolute. Display weakness, but guard the mind and the hands that execute your strategy. Never reveal the depth of your patience or the sharpness of your claws until the decisive moment arrives. And so, having glimpsed the first law, ask yourself if the world sees you as weak, who truly holds the power. The answer, cold as it is, will determine whether you remain a pawn or become the one who moves all the pieces. The stage is set, the players are blind, and your first act of dominance has only just begun. But what, then, is the next step for the lone wolf who has mastered deception through weakness? That is a law we will uncover next to see without being seen. This is the weapon of the lone wolf. Observation is not passive, it is active strategy. It is patience married to calculation. Ask yourself, do you move through the world or does the world move through you? The difference is decisive. History provides ample instruction. Take Talleyrand, the French diplomat who survived revolutions, empires, and executions. His power did not come from armies or titles. It came from watching, listening, recording. He observed the ambitions, the weaknesses, the fears of kings and generals alike. And when the moment arrived, he acted with precision. Knowledge, acquired in silence, became power beyond measure. You must learn this same discipline. The loudest voices are rarely the most dangerous. They are easily seen, easily manipulated. It is the quiet presence, the unseen spectator, who dictates outcomes. What is said is trivial, what is noticed is everything. You must cultivate the patience to witness the patterns of human behavior. Every gesture, every hesitation, every slight is a map to the inner workings of ambition and desire. Consider Sun Tzu, the strategist of old. Know the enemy and know yourself, he wrote. Yet there is a subtlety in this knowledge. It is not enough to know openly. You must observe in shadows, uncover intentions before they are revealed, and allow your enemy to display their hand without suspicion. Do you understand the power in watching, truly watching without alerting them to your gaze? This is intelligence disguised as inaction. Psychology reinforces this truth. Humans reveal far more than they intend. Micro-expressions, tones of voice, subtle hesitations, these betray desires, fears, and weaknesses. To be silent is to receive this information unfiltered, to gather intelligence while others speak, act, and mislead themselves. Have you noticed how often people reveal more when they believe you are uninterested? They underestimate the observer's attention. This is your advantage. Let us examine an example closer to intrigue and survival. The Venetian spies of the Renaissance. Cities were filled with conspiracies, plots that could topple rulers overnight. Yet, those who survived were rarely the bold conspirators. They were the patient watchers. Silent observation allowed them to anticipate betrayal, manipulate outcomes, and seize opportunities that others could not see. Knowledge gained in silence is both shield and sword. But silent observation demands discipline. The mind must remain still while the world moves in chaos. You cannot intervene too soon, for action alerts the unwary. You cannot wait too long, for opportunity will pass. Timing is everything. And patience, though difficult, separates the predator from the prey. Can you endure the stillness, the boredom, the endless subtlety of noticing what others ignore? The answer defines your mastery. Now, consider manipulation. Silent observation is not merely gathering intelligence, it is shaping perception. When people know you watch without revealing intent, they adjust their behavior, often unknowingly, to accommodate what they imagine you will do. You become an invisible hand guiding outcomes without touching them directly. Every whisper, every glance, every misstep they make is data you collect and leverage. Power flows to those who perceive more than they reveal. Ask yourself this. In your life, how often have you acted without truly knowing the terrain or the intentions of those around you? And yet, in silence, you can map every threat, every advantage, every hidden opportunity. You can predict movements, manipulate decisions, and strike decisively. Observation is preparation disguised as patience. It is domination executed without noise. But remember, observation alone is not enough. It is the precursor to action, the blueprint for dominance. You must see what others miss, know what they hide, and anticipate what they desire. The silent wolf strikes not blindly, but with perfect awareness. This is the difference between surviving in isolation and thriving as an unseen force of control. And so, having mastered the discipline of watching, you understand that knowledge is power, but only when wielded strategically. You have learned to read humans as maps of opportunity, to uncover weakness, to see the invisible threads of ambition and fear. Yet even the greatest observer faces a challenge. How do you transform silent knowledge into decisive influence? How do you convert awareness into control without revealing your hand too soon? The answer lies in the next law, the law that turns observation into domination. Prepare yourself, for what comes next will teach you how to strike from the shadows and make the world bend to your unseen hand. Attachment is a chain. Dependence is a cage. And yet, most men do not see it. They bind themselves to people, causes, and ideas as if loyalty were power. But power is never given. It is seized, maintained, and, when necessary, withdrawn. Ask yourself, are you free to act? Or are you tethered by invisible strings you do not even notice? History teaches this lesson with brutal clarity. Consider Cesare Borgia, the prince who rose in a world of treachery. He surrounded himself with allies, yet he never allowed emotion to cloud judgment. Friends were useful, enemies were obstacles, yet even allies were expendable if their loyalty threatened his freedom of action. Caesar knew that attachment was a liability. Detachment, strategic, deliberate, was his true weapon. You must learn the same discipline. Observe your relationships as chess pieces, not hearts to be softened. Every bond carries risk. Every promise can be exploited. The more entangled you become, the less freedom you possess. Can you endure the cold thought that affection, admiration, and loyalty are tools, not guarantees? Only by embracing this reality do you achieve true autonomy. Consider the psychology beneath this principle. Humans crave certainty, comfort, and connection. They mistake closeness for trust, dependence for strength. But these are illusions. Emotional bonds make the mind sluggish, cloud judgment, and create vulnerabilities others will exploit. Strategic detachment is not heartlessness, it is calculation. It is the understanding that your freedom to maneuver, to seize opportunity, and to act decisively is the ultimate form of power. Look to the great tacticians of war. Alexander the Great surrounded himself with generals and advisors, yet he often acted alone, making decisions that defied consensus. He listened, yes, but he did not bind himself to popular opinion, nor did he allow attachment to allies to dictate his campaigns. By remaining strategically detached, he could strike with unpredictability, exploiting gaps that others could not even perceive. Detachment also grants clarity. When you are unbound by expectation, you see reality without distortion. Others act to please, to impress, or to secure favor. You, detached, act to succeed. Their schemes, emotions, and weaknesses are revealed to you because you are not part of their web. You are the observer, the arbiter, the one free to act while they stumble in their dependencies. Have you ever noticed how the most effective leaders seem unemotional, almost cold? This is no accident. It is detachment mastered. Yet detachment must be strategic, not reckless. Do not isolate yourself unnecessarily. Allies can provide information, resources, and camouflage. But every connection must be weighed against the risk it imposes. Ask yourself, does this bond increase my options, or does it limit them? Does it enhance my freedom, or does it chain me to the expectations of others? The answer dictates whether you engage or step back. Let us examine the subtler manipulations of history. Queen Elizabeth I maintained detachment, even in personal relationships. Courtiers flattered, lovers sought influence, yet she revealed little of her intentions. She cultivated loyalty while remaining untethered, using affection as a shield and a weapon. Strategic detachment allowed her to manipulate alliances, control her court, and maintain sovereignty in a world that demanded compromise. The psychology is clear. Power lies in freedom. The moment you allow emotion, dependence, or expectation to dictate your actions, you relinquish control. Strategic detachment is the art of acting without constraint, observing without interference, and striking without hesitation. It is freedom made concrete, a state of mind that turns the lone actor into a force beyond prediction. Ask yourself, are you truly free to act in your own interest? Or do invisible chains bind you to the whims, fears, and desires of others? Strategic detachment teaches you to sever these chains without hesitation, to use connection as a tool, and to embrace solitude as a source of strength. The world respects not the bound, but the unbound, not the dependent, but the autonomous. And so, having mastered the discipline of detachment, you now stand at a precipice. Alone, unbound, free, yet not yet complete. For detachment alone does not seize power, it preserves the freedom to strike. To move from freedom to dominance requires understanding the subtle currents of influence that flow unseen around you. The next law will teach you how to convert your independence into irresistible control, to manipulate outcomes while remaining untouchable, and to turn calculated solitude into decisive supremacy. The game is far from over, and the moves that follow will define whether you remain merely free or become truly dominant. Fear is a tool, not cruelty, not malice, but a mechanism of control. It is precise, deliberate, and calculated. Ask yourself, do people obey you because they respect you or because they fear the consequences of defiance? One will fade with time, the other endures. Consider the reign of Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. His authority did not rest solely on armies or law. It rested on perception. The people feared his reach, the senators feared his influence, and even allies hesitated to challenge him. Yet Augustus rarely needed to raise a sword. Fear, subtle and controlled, was enough to bend the will of men without igniting rebellion. Do you see the distinction? Fear can be invisible, yet its effect is absolute. Controlled fear requires precision. Too much, and you provoke resistance. Too little, and you are ignored. The art lies in balance. Make your presence felt, your power acknowledged, but never so overwhelming that it demands open confrontation. The threat of action is often more potent than the action itself. How often have you obeyed the subtle warning rather than the explicit command? The principle is the same. History is filled with examples. Take the samurai of feudal Japan. Their presence alone inspired obedience. A mere glance, a measured gesture, or the knowledge of their potential violence kept entire domains in line. Fear did not require spectacle. It required perception. It was silent, efficient, and total. The lesson is clear. Mastery of fear lies in shaping belief, not in reckless displays of strength. Psychologically, humans are risk-averse. They avoid pain, loss, and danger. When fear is applied correctly, it aligns their behavior with your will without force. You must understand the triggers, the subtle threats, the small but meaningful demonstration of power, the unpredictable decisions that remind others of your capacity. Have you noticed how uncertainty amplifies influence? Fear thrives in the gaps between expectation and reality. Let us examine the strategic deployment of fear. Queen Catherine de' Medici, navigating the treacherous waters of 16th century France, understood this intimately. She maintained influence over her sons, her nobles, and even her enemies by cultivating an aura of unpredictability. She did not strike unnecessarily, yet her capacity for decisive action was never in doubt. Fear, in her hands, was a weapon invisible until it struck an invisible leash guiding even the proudest men. Controlled fear is not tyranny. It is leverage. It ensures compliance, obedience, and respect without surrendering moral or political authority. Observe the bands. The moment a ruler relies on fear alone, rebellion follows. But when fear is married to subtle respect or admiration, it becomes a self-sustaining mechanism. People act as you desire, not because they must, but because they calculate the cost of opposition and find it unbearable. The psychology deepens further. Fear, when aligned with unpredictability, becomes a psychological echo. Your absence is remembered. Your presence is anticipated. They speak your name in caution, their behavior subtly, molded by the potential of your decision. Have you noticed how men shape their actions around those who can harm them, even silently? This is power, quiet yet irresistible. Now, consider the implications for the lone wolf. Isolation does not diminish influence, it amplifies it. If wielded with calculated intimidation, the fewer who challenge you, the sharper your reputation. The deeper the impression of control. Fear need not be widespread, it must be precise, targeted, and inescapable. One well-placed, consistently enforced principle suffices to shape behavior far beyond your immediate reach. Ask yourself, do you wield fear or does fear wield you? The difference is subtle but absolute. To control fear, you must understand timing, perception, and restraint. You must know when to act, when to threaten, and when to remain still. The mind of man is pliable, bending quietly under the shadow of invisible power, and the master of this art becomes untouchable without lifting a sword. And so, having understood the power of controlled fear, you are ready to elevate strategy beyond intimidation. Fear alone does not conquer, it prepares the mind for influence, manipulation, and decisive action. The next law reveals how patience, timing, and opportunity convert observation and detachment into the unstoppable force of a true lone wolf. The stage is set. Fear is your ally, not your master. Yet what comes next will show you how to strike when all are blind and claim victory with precision unseen. Patience is the silent weapon of the wise. Timing is the unseen hand that turns preparation into triumph. And yet, how many act impulsively, striking too soon or waiting too late? The lone wolf thrives not by constant aggression, but by calculated opportunity. Ask yourself, do you move with instinct? Or do you move when advantage is absolute? History rewards those who strike when the world is unprepared. Consider Hannibal at Cannae. The Romans were confident, disciplined, and numerous. Many believed Hannibal's forces too weak to challenge them decisively. Yet he observed, waited, and struck with precision. In a single day, what seemed improbable became inevitable. Opportunity, cultivated through patience, is more lethal than brute force. Opportunistic strikes require vigilance. They demand that you watch the flow of events, the arrogance of opponents, and the subtle miscalculations that others make. Do you notice how men reveal their weaknesses when blinded by overconfidence? They are easiest to conquer, not in open confrontation, but when they believe they hold the advantage. The art lies in seeing what others cannot and moving before they recover. Consider the psychology of anticipation. Humans misjudge risk. They assume consistency where none exists, stability where chaos reigns. When you identify the exact moment of imbalance, you exploit it. It is not brute aggression, it is calculation. It is waiting for the precise second when hesitation, overconfidence, or distraction leaves them exposed. Have you noticed how opportunity favors the quiet observer, not the loud actor? History again offers instruction. The Norman conquest of England in 1066 was not achieved by mere strength. William the Conqueror observed the political chaos, the fractured loyalty, and the exhaustion of King Harold's army after Hastings. Then, and only then, did he strike. The moment was decisive, the strike unstoppable. Strategy dictated action, and the world remembered the consequences. Opportunistic strikes are not impulsive, they are premeditated inevitabilities. Each action is a response to the exact alignment of advantage, timing, and vulnerability. The wolf does not chase every rabbit. It waits for the one that runs into its trap. The world is full of distractions, conflicts, and diversion. Can you endure observation long enough to recognize when the moment to act arrives? The difference between victory and failure is measured in patience. Consider the psychological interplay of fear, observation, and detachment. Fear softens resistance. Observation reveals weakness. Detachment frees action. But none of this matters if you fail to strike at the precise instant, when conditions are favorable. Hesitation transforms advantage into risk. Impatience transforms precision into folly. True mastery requires all elements aligned, waiting in silence for the decisive moment. Look to the subtle manipulations of history. Otto von Bismarck did not dominate Europe by acting recklessly. He waited for opportunity, nurturing alliances, cultivating enemies, and orchestrating crises. When the moment arrived, the Franco-Prussian War, he struck with precision. The victory reshaped the continent. Patience, observation, and calculated aggression converged. Opportunity was seized. The psychology is straightforward yet rarely applied. Humans overestimate their own foresight, underestimate others, and fear acting too late. The opportunist knows that the perfect moment is never announced. It must be recognized, seized, and exploited. Timing, in this sense, is intelligence made actionable. The world moves, constantly creating gaps, errors, and openings. The question is, will you notice them, or will you remain blind, powerless while others take advantage? Opportunistic strikes are also deeply personal. They require knowing your own strengths, understanding your limitations, and calculating the risk-to-reward ratio before moving. The wolf strikes where it can guarantee success, not merely out of desire. Precision, patience, and restraint are inseparable from power. Every missed opportunity is a lesson. Every seized one is a step toward dominance. And so, having learned the law of opportunistic strikes, you understand that power is not constant action, but measured, decisive intervention. The world rewards the patient, the observant, and the strategically detached. But even with all preparation, the lone wolf's journey is not complete. The final law awaits, the law that fuses self-sufficiency, independence, and unstoppable influence into one enduring force. Only then will observation, patience, fear, and precision converge into the absolute dominance of a true lone wolf. Prepare yourself. What you have learned is formidable, but what comes next will transform preparation into supremacy. True power does not depend on others. It does not wait for allies, favors, or circumstance. It originates within. Ask yourself, are you dependent, or are you sovereign in thought, skill, and action? The lone wolf thrives not because the world supports him, but because he requires nothing beyond his own calculated mastery. History shows us the consequences of dependence. Consider the fate of Mark Antony. Brilliant, bold, yet reliant on loyalty that was fragile, alliances that shifted, and passion that clouded judgment. He could not act independently. Caesar's death left him exposed, vulnerable to Octavian's patient and self-sufficient strategy. Antony fell not for lack of ambition, but because he tethered his power to others. Can you see the lesson? Dependence is weakness masquerading as strength. Self-sufficiency demands that every tool, skill, and resource needed to act decisively is under your control. Armies, allies, influence, these are instruments, not foundations. When you build upon others, you inherit their flaws. But when you rely on yourself, failure becomes a calculated risk, not an unpredictable disaster. True autonomy is the greatest armor and the most dangerous weapon. Look at the philosophy of independence in action. Leonardo da Vinci navigated courts, princes, and rivalries, yet his genius, his vision, and his skill made him indispensable on his own terms. He was beholden to no single patron. His survival, influence, and legacy were products of self-reliance. Skills, knowledge, and adaptability, the very essence of autonomy, became shields and levers for power. Could you operate as such, unbound, yet influential beyond measure? The psychology is revealing. Humans naturally seek support, approval, and safety in numbers, yet reliance diminishes the mind's sharpness. Every favor owed, every expectation accepted, every hidden agenda tolerated erodes clarity. Self-sufficiency strengthens cognition, sharpens judgment, and allows action without compromise. When you act alone, you answer to no one but the calculation of advantage. Who among you can endure such responsibility, such freedom? Consider the silent lessons of history's conquerors. Genghis Khan did not rise through alliance alone. He mastered self-sufficiency on every level. His strategies, logistics, and decision-making were independent. His forces were disciplined, yet his authority was rooted in his capacity to act decisively without reliance. The Mongol Empire spread because one man could strike where others faltered, seeing paths that bound rulers could not pursue. Independence, cultivated, became unstoppable force. Self-sufficiency is also strategic. It allows you to act unpredictably without warning or constraint. When others anticipate reliance on allies or resources, they calculate your limitations. But the self-sufficient are unknowable. Their capacity for influence, survival, and aggression is hidden. They are the lone wolf in a forest of predictable prey, unseen until the decisive moment. Can you feel the freedom in such invisibility? Can you see how the absence of dependence multiplies leverage beyond measure? And yet, autonomy alone is not enough. It must be disciplined, honed, and precise. Skills untested are illusions. Knowledge unapplied is wasted. Every competence, every insight, every resource must be mastered and ready. A self-sufficient actor is always prepared for the unforeseen, impervious to betrayal, and capable of converting opportunity into dominance. Have you noticed how the unprepared dependent often falls at the first sign of crisis? Do you wish to be one, or the one who endures while others falter? Self-sufficiency also grants a unique form of influence. Others may follow, fear, or admire, but they cannot bind you. You shape events without entanglement. Your actions are dictated not by need, but by calculation. Every decision reflects strategy, not obligation. This is the apex of the lone wolf's power, the ability to move unhindered, strike unpredictably, and dictate outcomes without compromise. Ask yourself, are you a vessel of your own power, or a conduit for the will of others. The difference defines your capacity to dominate, survive, and endure. Independence is not merely a condition, it is the law of ultimate influence. The self-sufficient wolf bends circumstance to his will, unchallenged and unstoppable. And so, having mastered detachment, observation, patience, fear, opportunistic, strikes, and finally self-sufficiency, you are no longer merely surviving. You are a force. The laws converge, and the lone wolf becomes a shadow the world cannot ignore. Yet mastery is never complete. Power must be maintained, refined, and executed with relentless precision. The final lesson awaits the understanding that dominance is not a static state, but a living strategy that requires constant calculation. Are you ready to embrace the ultimate truth of control, influence, and solitary supremacy? Power is rarely taken by force. It is whispered into existence. It thrives in the unseen, in the unnoticed, in the quiet manipulation of perception. You do not dominate by announcing intent, you dominate by bending reality while others remain blind. Have you observed the weakness in the confident, the arrogance in the cautious, the vulnerability in the loyal? These are not accidents. They are opportunities waiting for the calculated hand to claim them. Control is not about obedience. It is about shaping thought, guiding action, and creating inevitability without ever lifting a finger. Alone or surrounded, the rules remain the same. Appear weak when strong, observe when silent, act when opportune, fear subtly, detach ruthlessly, and cultivate self-sufficiency. The world moves, blind to your influence, until you decide the moment to strike. Now it is your turn. Comment your thoughts. How will you bend perception to your will? Subscribe for more strategies of unseen power. Share this video, and let those who dare observe wonder who truly commands the shadows.